Through a post-World War II lens, most westernized cultures stand aberrant to racial biases, a trait fairly new to these societies which used to detest interracial mixings of any sort, whether that be marriage, friendship, or industry. In the East, however, citizens stood and still stand against racist attitudes. In both of these hemispheres, racial bigotry still stains the minds of many individuals, and attitudes towards people of different races can continue to be tense and prejudiced. Through the medium of film musicals, audience members take the experience and lessons from the show and translate it into their own lives. Musicals have become culturally significant because they talk about subjects not typically covered in other media. The Russian musical Circus from 1936 tells the story of Marian Dixon, an American singer and dancer who escaped to Russia when ousted after giving birth to a black child, finding refuge on stage at a circus in Soviet-era Russia. In the American musical South Pacific from 1958, the movie demonstrates the ongoings of nurse Nellie Forbrush and Lieutenant Joseph Cable, both stationed on a Pacific island with American troops during World War II. Nellie struggles with deciding whether or not she should marry Frenchman Emile Debec, who fathers 2 Polynesian children. Cable similarly struggles with the possibility of marrying the Tonkinese Liat, who he feels would not be accepted in his white society back in Philadelphia. Both musical films play with themes of racist beliefs across their respective societies, and help viewers see the difference and similarities in attitudes towards different races. Circus, a pre-World War II film, speaks towards the rising racial tensions contemporaneous with the arrival of Nazism in the West. Attitudes towards interracial mixings were mostly negative, with pejorative terms created to detest the miscegenation between white people and any other race considered inferior. Franz von Nietzsche, Marian's German Nazi-sympathizing theater agent in an outrage, decides to reveal to the general USSR public that Marian Dixon mothers a black child named Jimmy. Marian is fearful about the audience's reaction to this news since she has previously been thrown out of America for the same reason. Nietzsche's forthcoming monologue repeats the rhetoric of anti-white fascists, something the Russians seem to criticize. In Nietzsche's choreography, actor Pavel Masalski waves down the audience in a fashion similar to that of a Nazi soldier would use as part of their goose-step salute. He holds on to the young black child loosely, feeling little connection to the kid he dislikes. Nietzsche is framed in the upper 2/3 of most of the camera shots, demonstrating his believed superiority over non-whites. Director Grigory Alexandrov himself admitted he was referencing Germany because in Germany Hitler was already calling with all his might for the extermination of inferior peoples. Nietzsche is written to epitomize Western and German Nazi exceptionalism, referring to this young child with racist terminology straight from the books of prominent Nazis at the time, such as Hitler. In a long shot, the young child removes himself from the racist Nazi and embraces the welcoming Russians. Alexandrov employs the sound of the child crying to represent his innocence, living in a world he is not aware can hate him for his ethnicity. Humorously, the show director Vladimir Volodin questions Nietzsche's attitude towards the child, and the Russian audience breaks into laughter. In the Eastern world, the relative inexperience with black people offered African American visitors a unique opportunity to explore modes of black identity. In the Western world, racism was a learned behavior, seemingly due to the exposure of white people to black people, the former taking on a superior role to the latter. In South Pacific, Officer Lieutenant Joseph Cable sings to wealthy Frenchman Emile Debec about the Western teachings of racism and fear. Ironically, the song is upbeat, playing against a low-key lit dark background, creating contrast between the message Cable is trying to convey, being a more grim one, with a faint optimism and lightheartedness that eventually brings Nellie and Emile back together at the end of the film. Cable is mostly seen in two-shot with Emile Debec, demonstrating the similarity in their belief of taught racism. Cable is made to look away from Emile during the song, almost embarrassed. Emile has a tiny bit of high-key lighting pointed at his chest since he demonstrates a faint optimism in his heart. This resonated with many Americans who felt this message of learned behavior was true. Kathleen Ziegler, who grew up during the Second World War, recalls, "One of her earliest memories is knowing that you were supposed to hate Japs," Americans used to say, "bombs over Tokyo, and drop something on the ground." She never thought of it as being hateful then. The original playwrights, Meissner and Hammerstein, each recounted pleas from critics and audience members demanding the song be removed. And in the southern United States, Representative David C. Jones wrote in a letter, "We in the South are a proud and progressive people. Half-breeds cannot be proud," while he was scolding the song. In reaction to these scenes, both films show their respective societies' attitudes towards children of mixed race. At the end of Nietzsche's tirade in Circus, the audience passes around Marion's black child and sings a song of love to the boy. Each singer is of a different ethnic background and sings to the child in their original language. A slight pan of the camera back and forth creates an almost rocking effect, so that it feels like a lullaby is being sung directly to the audience, to promote egalitarianism. In a close-up shot, Jimmy is closely embraced by a Russian black man who sings of unity in their motherland. Each singer has a soothing voice, giving the sequence a lullaby quality to it, embracing the child and revering him. Movie analyst Marina Efimova claimed, "When the audience passes a black baby from hand to hand, it was made precisely in the spirit of internationalism." Margaret Glasgow, a black Russian hairdresser, claimed that her time in Russia had made her feel that she'd quite forgotten that she was black. She simply felt like a human being, that's all. Still, in the Western world, seen in South Pacific, Officer Lieutenant Joseph Cable considers marrying the beautiful Polynesian Liat, which her mother, Bloody Mary, has created an ultimatum for Cable to decide whether or not he would live with Liat or move back to Philadelphia. A long-take wide shot firstly establishes Cable and Liat as being emotionally connected due to their physical closeness. Cable touches Liat seductively as he listens to her mother. However, as Cable is introduced to the idea of children with Liat by her mother, he removes himself and becomes much more distant, physically and emotionally, from Liat. The non-diegetic score becomes more abrupt and harsh, as Cable's revelation that he cannot have a child with Liat is confirmed. In Philadelphia, it seems that Cable cannot possibly marry Liat, as she would never be accepted back home. By extension, neither would their future mixed-race children be welcome in America. The shattering of the gift watch seals the fate of the relationship between Cable and Liat, and she moves from the high-key lit foreground, originally designed to demonstrate the believed unwavering love of Liat and Cable, to Liat being in a low-key lit background, breaking the bond that the two lovers had, and having Liat fade into obscurity once more, due to the westernized oppression that haunts and will continue to haunt her. Defeated, Lieutenant Joseph Cable walks closely to the watch, and in a close shot, he stares longingly at Liat leaving in the distance, imagining what life could have been like with the beautiful Polynesian woman. In Circus, as Marion Dixon sings a song with her romantic interest, Ivan Martynov, she overhears in the distance her black child wailing. She has not yet revealed her black baby to Martynov and seems to want to keep it that way. Martynov plays a beautiful diegetic song, creating an initial tone of love and harmony. Dixon takes control over the piano and starts banging loudly on the keys to drown out the sound of her baby crying. The diegetic song quickly becomes obnoxious and loud as the tone of the scene shifts from love to hate, a romantic relation to an attempt to hide a black child. The change from smooth piano to a cacophonous banging that Marion plays lends itself as a metaphor for the struggles Marion has. She is stressed and she wants to be allowed to exist by the people she's around, even if that means she must hide her child. She's used to Western society and their hatred towards her interracial baby. Martynov, being a Russian man, does not care either way about the fact that Marion has a child or that he is black, and is willing to be with Marion no matter the circumstance, since Martynov does not embrace herdism and racism. Similarly, in South Pacific, Nellie reveals she has no recollection of Emil telling her he has mixed Polynesian children when she is interrogated by a military general on Emil's life in France and his lack of reason for moving to Polynesia. A lack of any score in this scene, diegetic or non-diegetic, makes the conversation confusing and intense, since Nellie is unaware of things the officers questioning her are aware of, even though Emil has interest in Nellie. Emil wants to fit in, and he knows that if he told Nellie too early about his children, her preconceived notions of interracial children in Western society would bar her from ever seeing Emil romantically again. In the Eastern Bloc, racism was an issue that came up rarely, as society didn't demand for superiority from individuals based on race or any other status as seen in the Western world. Westerners are seemingly brought up with racist values, which still linger in small capacities to this day, while Easterners, though perhaps prejudiced, often did not live lives based on racial background pre- and post-World War II.